I think what's crazy is sometimes like you don't really see that, right? Like the way that I see myself as a football player is I try to consistently be the same guy every day, no matter what. And I
Mm.
know I'm not perfect, and I know I mess up at this, but like after a loss, I try to come in with a smile on my face. After a win, I try to come in with a smile on my face and be the same collected, sort of cool, sort of calm, like leader in the locker room.
We'll kick those tires and start that virtually fake fire. We are camping again. Gosh, it has been so long, campers. And due to the copious amounts of notes you have spoken, you do love it when I interview athletes. I was about to say former athlete, but that does not apply here because we
Could
have
be
in the
soon. Who knows?
we have in our studio the real McCoy, not the 90s singer who has some classic hits, which I do recommend that McCoy as well, and not Matt McCoy, often conflated with Colt McCoy. There's so many McCoys going around, but we have college football legend, and yes, I will say legend, and man who really missed out on name, image, and likeness deals while he was in college, and
No
quarterback for the
kidding.
quarterback for the Cardinals. Please welcome Colt McCoy, the real McCoy, unless you confuse him with other McCoys, to the show. Colt, thanks for being
Oh,
here,
thank
man.
you, man. Thank you. Glad to be here this morning, sitting around the campfire, and yeah, let's jump into this. This can be a fun little podcast.
Now, I know it must pain you that Matt Leinart got to be in the actual campfire, but you, because you've chosen residency in a free state, have not been able to come camp with us in person. So, we'll have to see. But I do want
That's all
to.
right. That's all right.
I
Sat
do have.
around many campfires myself, but wish I was there in person. It takes a lot to pull me out to California, being from Texas and Arizona.
Well, we're happy. We're shipping you quite a bit. We're exporting a lot to Texas right now, so you're welcome. So I do have to ask. It is funny. I meant to ask Matt Leinart this, but how much have you thought about the the name, image, and likeness deals and what that would have meant for you in college football? I think about, especially being at USC at the time. I mean, y'all were the first wave of these celebrity,
Right.
quarterbacks. I mean, in fact, we'd be in a way cooler set probably.
No doubt. Yeah, Mark Sanchez and I were the same high school class. So I look back on our time in college, and he was the face of USC, and at Texas we were pretty successful. We won a bunch of games, and
I remember.
um, it's almost so frustrating to think about. Oh, what if we would have had this NIL deal in college back then? The first thing I go to is Texas hasn't really won that. They hadn't consistently won games, in a long time. It's like I know what it's like when you're going to national championships. I mean, it is like there's nothing like it. I remember when I was in college, after each home game, I would have to go do media in the press conference, and I would walk into the media room, and there'd be no less than 50, sometimes up to 100 cameras and just national media and local media. And Texas is like your NFL team because it's the biggest thing in Austin. And you just the pressure of having to handle that, week to week, and you kind of get used to it because I was fortunate enough to play for 4 years at UT, and then you go to the NFL. I remember my first game for the Browns in Cleveland. I step into the media room after a game that we had won, and I'm like, okay, he was like, all right, questions, anybody? And there's like four people in there. And I'm sitting there like, wait, are we starting? Where is everybody? Right. So when you think about the NIL and what that's doing for college athletes around the country, and the opportunities that they have off the field. I mean, I can't imagine what it would have been like back then. I mean, it would have been cool, but who knows if I'd be where I'm sitting at now, right? So it is a very interesting topic. I'm sure Matt had a lot to say about it. I kind of go back and forth on how I feel about it, but regardless, I still love college football. It's such a great game.
Oh yeah. Do you think one thing that's interesting? I mean, with college football in general, like, do you think I've heard a few people talk about this consolidation that's going to happen because essentially, the joke is that USC might have been paying people for years,
Maybe probably everybody. Like,
yeah, obviously I joke, but like I mean, college football, there's all sorts of shenanigans that go on. But now with the way it's moving, it's like, it seems like certain universities are not going to play ball, and others are going to have, with these huge alumni booster classes, like you're going to essentially be able to just make offers and get who you want, right? I mean, are we going to have a second NFL in college and then power, like schools like USC, which can and will say, look, we need the best defensive back of the country. Let's hook them up with some deals, right? I mean,
that's essentially what's happening. It is what's happening. You look at just USC. You mentioned the transformation of their season last year versus the season they had this year. I mean, just the amount of players that they had was like incredible. They went out and bought all the players, and I don't know that the NCAA was hoping this was going to become like a pay for play type thing, but that's essentially, that's what it is. It's pay for play, right? And I don't know these contracts that these athletes are signing, but I know that they're 7-figure deals all over the place at the blue blood schools like USC, Texas, all the SEC schools, Michigan, Ohio State, right? They have these NIL funds that pay their athletes. I'm all for a guy who is performing at a high level, going out and doing a couple marketing deals on the side and making some money. And I think that was kind of the idea. And now it's just a very gray area of like, hey, we have these huge NIL funds that each school or collectives or whatever you want to call them, that, hey, coach, you want to pay these guys, you like the top DB over in, is playing up in, the Mountain West, who's like had 10 picks last year. Let's bring him here. Well, how much you want to pay him? I don't know how that whole process works, but I know that it's very gray. Like when I talk to some college coaches, it's like, I don't know if this is right or wrong. No one's getting in trouble yet. I don't know how long this can sustain itself, but it is wild. And it does seem like it's free agency in the NFL every year in college. You have to work to be a free agent in the NFL, right? You got to sign a contract. You got to play through your contract till you can hit your second contract, your third contract. And then, you go to the highest bidder. Well, in college, it's like, man, I can do this every year. Like, so I don't know how long it's going to last, or how it can sustain itself. But the game in college football has definitely changed.
Oh yeah. Well, you mentioned the gray area, so that seems like a good segue. Is there a sponsor you're trying to get that you want to thank right now? Is it too late for us to get NIL deals?
Right. Well, so I have a marketing agent and agency out of New York, and they're getting all these college guys these NIL deals, and that's where all the marketing is going. Is these up and coming? Oh, let's look and see who's getting paid by the school collective, and then let's sign them to do a marketing deal because it's kind of the hot name. And a lot of the NFL guys or NBA guys or guys who have been pretty successful are like losing out to NIL deals for college athletes, which is very crazy to me.
Do you think you could?
But
do you think you could have
marketing teams are signing these big deals with the university? So it's like almost, if you want your name in the stadium on Saturday afternoons, you got to pay our athletes, right? So it's just a crazy process that's going on. I don't know that anybody knows where it's going to stop or how big it's going to get. It's very evolving, but very unique.
I mean, I don't think it's implausible that you could have say you're at a smaller school and they want to bring in a huge game-changing player. That player might be making more than the coach, and
many times that's exactly right.
And then you're like taking orders from them and you're like, it's crazy. And then you think like Alabama, et cetera. At what point does Alabama become just its own professional football team that's loosely affiliated with the school? Because why not just do away with the athletic or the academic requirements? Because you're going to essentially recruit all that. And then also you think about the longevity in football and how beat up you get. And it's like, well, if you can make all this money and play college, you might as well just there's maybe a whole class of guys who go to college, make their money, star, et cetera. Maybe do a year to get that draft, go a couple years in the NFL, and then walk away. And
a lot of these guys are going to take pay cuts to go to the NFL. There's no question.
That's trippy.
There's no question.
Yeah.
No question. And I don't guess I have an issue with guys getting paid and making money in college. I mean, it's a real game. It's tough. It's hard. Part of the NFL is we have benefits, right? If you become a vested player, you have health benefits, you have your 401ks, you have your pension plans, you have all these things. Well, these guys are making just as much money as a lot of guys in the NFL, and there's no things set up for them from what I'd be more concerned with is just like, hey, the IRS is going to come breathing down your throat if you don't have somebody that's going to help you pay these taxes. And, if you get hurt, right, there's no one that's going to pay your bills in the next few years because you don't have insurance, So there's a lot of things that come with that I don't know that there's not a case study on this because it's very new. We're like 2 years into it. But I would be a little bit concerned about that.
Well, maybe one day you and Matt can go back to your schools and do a class action for funds. We could project how much y'all could have made.
I'm pretty sure they're still selling my jersey at UT, and I still haven't seen a dime from it. But that's okay, I guess.
All right, we'll address that. We'll address that egregious wrong some other time. Well, while we're on NFL topic, I did a couple questions I want to ask you. What is just, obviously college football, you had hell of a career, et cetera. What is the main difference between when you go from college to the NFL? What is the big eye-opening difference besides the fact that the talent level has just, I think it's 1%, of the college players go to the NFL. But what struck you when you first got to the NFL? Like, what was that like?
I think there's a couple of things. One, I realized very quickly that the game is a lot different because it's the biggest, strongest, fastest humans that God ever created on a football field, right? And it's everywhere. The guys that you've never heard of are still in the 1% of the world that are out there playing. And then the second part is like in college, you do work hard. I worked so hard to get where I'm at, but like you realize that, there's no school break anymore. There's no like going home and hanging out with your boys, right? Like there's no, it's 24/7 football and that's it. And, you have great coaches on every team and you see so many different schemes and looks. Whereas like, in college, you could get away with a lot by just being a good athlete and like making plays with your feet and scrambling around and, almost playing like NCAA football on Xbox. Well, when you get to the NFL, like that changes very quickly. And you have to be able to read coverage and, assess blitzes and soft spots in defenses and play in rhythm and get the ball out on time and, stand in a certain spot in the pocket so your lineman can form this like, place for you to throw where you're not going to get hit. Like they're just the details and the process of playing just completely changes. And, I'm fortunate to be going into my 14th year in the NFL and there was a lot of bumps in the road trying to figure that out. Right. And, you get lucky when you're on a good team or you got good guys around you, or you got coaches who create an edge for you and, all those things. But man, it's such a different game. And that's why you see a ton of guys that are probably way more talented than me just kind of phase out as they go from college to the NFL. Just they couldn't adjust to the speed and to the complexity of this game, which is so much different than college.
Do you remember the first time you got hit on your blind side in the NFL? Was there a wake up call moment where, you've been hit hard before, and obviously, but was there a moment where you're like, oh man, welcome to the NFL, and you got your first taste of a NFL defensive end or a linebacker?
Yeah, no question. There was a couple. One, I remember I was in training camp, and we still had 2-a-days at the time, it was a grind. And I remember like playing quarterback and throwing balls, and we're running routes and we go into a team period and like I don't complete a pass. And then I'm thinking to myself, like, either these are bad plays or I stink. And so we go back into the film room and coach is watching a clip. He's like, he paused the tape, like throw the ball. Guy's open, throw it, cut it loose right now. And I'm like, the guy is draped in coverage. And my coach pulls me aside after the meeting. He's like, hey, bud, you're going to have to let it rip. He's like, you're not going to have dudes with separation like all over the field. This isn't college anymore.
Wow.
Like, you got to throw the ball on time, in rhythm, with accuracy. That's the only way you're going to make it work. And so it was this development of like, goodness gracious, like I'm throwing the ball way before a dude's getting out of his break and just put it in places where I think that they can get it. And slowly you start figuring out, based off coverage and the responsibilities of corners and safeties and linebackers and their hook zones and their drop areas, and like figuring out where the soft spot is. And I mean, those are just things that you don't learn in college. And the faster you can pick them up, the more you can adjust and play. And you look at this weekend's games, or really the last 2 weeks. I mean, all these quarterbacks were under 30. Like, it's so impressive what these guys are doing and accomplishing. Like, I'm so amazed.
Oh, yeah. And you have to do all that with a 330-pound dude running at
Yeah,
you, who also
exactly.
runs a 40 in the same time frame you do, right?
Right. Exactly.
And coming
Exactly.
at you. It's yeah, well, that's it. So basically you throw by faith, not by sight.
Many times. There's many times in this game, and I do not like doing it, but there's many times where I am blinded. I've got people in my face or somebody wrapped around my legs, and I know the area that my receiver is supposed to be in, and I just throw it and trust it.
Oh,
And
man.
sometimes you're on the ground listening for crowd noise and hoping it's like a really big play and everybody goes crazy. Or if it's silence, it's not good. Like, you turn it over, and coach is going to be yelling at you, "What are you doing?" And like those are ones that you for sure hold your breath.
Oh, man. Now, I know this is somewhat of a little bit of a tricky topic, but you're no stranger to concussions. You've had at least, I think, 3 that you can remember, right? But so I'm curious, what is the general attitude in your opinion of just, is this a thing where, you're going to play football, so hey, it's understood that multiple collisions with your head against another human being is not going to be beneficial, right?
No.
And it's going to happen, but it's just a reality of the game. And do you have any thoughts on just overall, do you feel that they're making great strides to make the game, safer? Do you feel that you can make football safe, or the other level, are we just, it's just a risk that, especially for linemen, et cetera, that you can't, unless we have the National Flag Football League, it's just something we're going to have to play with?
Yeah, right. No, I think there's so much conversation around concussions, and it's kind of at the forefront of player safety and all those things. And I've had a couple of concussions myself. I had one this year. I've learned
really?
a lot about concussions just by playing and talking to doctors. And just here in Phoenix, we have the top doctor for concussions and neurological health and safety. Like he's right here in our backyard in Phoenix. And I had a concussion this year, and I spent a lot of time talking to him. And as an older athlete, I'm sure I've had a few that weren't maybe written down and documented, and just kind of getting his thoughts and how he feels. And I do think the game has gotten so much safer from the standpoint of protecting players, and our equipment's getting better. But concussions are real, and you look at guys who played in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s who are now starting to have issues. And so you start thinking about, man, I've played football since 7th grade. I've played for almost 25 years. Like, I'm sure I've been hit a lot. And but talking to these doctors and to these guys who have studied this topic for their whole careers, like, I do feel like there's a lot of ways that they understand concussions, and there's still a lot of things that they don't fully understand. But the treatments, sort of the return to play processes, some of the medications that you can take for it, the way that they're designing equipment, and like, the helmet that I wear right now is like laser fit to my head.
Oh, wow.
There's so many advancements that they've put in place for players that I think help. And I get asked the question all the time, you're going to let your son play football someday, because of concussions? And my answer is always, yeah, absolutely. Like, what football has taught me and provided for me, for me, far outweighs like the risk of injury. Like, I know going out on the field, I have the risk of getting severely hurt at any point. And, I tell people all the time, if you play football, there's 100% chance that you're going to get hurt. right? It's just part of the game. And I think that's why fans love it. I think for men, even as boys, we're out there seeking adventure, and we're seeking competition, and we're seeking some idea of discipline and working hard and training and being out there with your buddies and camaraderie. And like football has provided that my whole life. And it's the best team sport out there. And it's a chance for you to get dirty and to hit and to, get out some aggression, and do it, in a sort of almost controlled environment, right?
Yeah.
With referees and coaches who coach the game right. And it's a very fun sport. And for me, I learned discipline. I learned the idea of sacrifice and training and giving up some things so that I could have an opportunity to get my college paid for, right? Oh wow, somebody wants to pay me to come play in the NFL. Like I get to play a kid's game at a professional level and get paid for it. Like I still treat the game like I'm a little boy. Like I love the adventure. I love the smell of the grass and get out there and with a group of guys, and like, we all have the same goal, is to go win a game. Well, what does that take? Like the routine, the process of doing it all. Like I'm still in love with that. And that, to me, that far outweighs the risk of injury, because I'm seeking this out. And that may sound crazy to somebody who's never done it. If there's a mother listening to this podcast, she's probably rolling her eyes. But at the end of the day, like that's if you really break it down, like that's what we all love about the game, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's just different. And I've had concussions, I've had broken bones, I've had just about every, pulled muscles, and like I've had it all. And it gets to a point where you got to say, like, I don't know if I can deal with this anymore, right? You're processing. I'm 36 years old. After every season, I'm thinking, well, do I have what it takes to go through the whole process? And the process is not suiting up on Sundays and playing football like everybody sees. The process is waking up at 5 a.m. every morning and going to train and watching tape and studying and perfecting your craft and dealing with injuries and bumps and bruises and coaches and players and building a team, and at the same time sacrificing all that time away from your wife and your kids and flying all over the country to play on Sundays. It's a grind. Right now, I said it earlier. I still love it, but I have to go through that process to say, do I want to go through this again? Because as a competitor, you're not just going to go out there and get paid millions of dollars and just be okay with that. Like, there's not many guys that I know that are cool with that. As a competitor, you prepare and you train to win, and that's the bottom line. And that there's a lot that goes into that.
Well, we're getting into some Coach McCoyisms there, preparing to win here. I'm with you though, man. I remember even when I was at SC, I would walk by sometimes on a Friday night, and I'd see like golden hour in that football field. And it's hard to explain, but like if you play, especially high school football, which is probably my favorite just because of the purity of the sport, it's just about formation, and it is more about fun. Obviously in Texas, it is obviously a religious observation, but it was, but I remember our coach, we had one game where we were just, lining up, and it was the second to last game for the seniors. And our tradition at our school was they all have you right before you start warm-ups, you all hold hands and you stand on the field and you just stare at the other team. And the coach's philosophy was that would intimidate the other team. They'd be like, they don't need to practice, they're just going to stare at us. I think you guys said the Spartans would just line up and just stare at their opponent. And I'm like, okay. We went 6-6, so we'll talk about worked or not. But offensively, we averaged 38 points a game, so wasn't our fault.
There you go.
I was throwing the team under the bus there, but I remember though the coach was like, taking this moment. He's like, one day you will give anything to come back here and play again. He's like, this is the height for a lot of you. This may be some of the last games you play. Treasure this, take it in, and there's just Friday night under the lights with your boys it's just an experience that's so surreal. And to this day, I get a little misty eyed just thinking about, I can't imagine what retirement's like for y'all as professional athletes, which is why, according to the Brady rule, you still got a good 15 years in you, it looks like, but I get, like, as much as I know all the back and forth, like, I can't imagine how hard it is to hang it up. like to say, I
Yeah.
can't do this anymore, because like you're never going to stop competing,
Hmm.
till the day you die, especially if your last name's McCoy. I know you're going to be going after something.
Right. I think the hardest part, and listen, I know I'm getting to the end of my career. I mean, I want to play a little bit longer. It could be 3 or 4 more years, 5 more years. It could be now. Like, you're just processing all that. But I've seen many of my teammates in the past who I feel like had it all together, and they have a family, and they had a great career, and they made a ton of money, and thinking like, oh man, like when they retire, they're set, like they have it all figured out, and like, man, I'm telling you, many times like these guys just can't figure out what to do next, right? They're still searching for that, and there's some guys who leave, and they move on to their next deal, and they're super successful and doing great, right? It changes for everybody. But here, the thing I think about the most is, and when I look at these guys who I love all of them, like tremendous guys, is there's something about it, an NFL player or a professional athlete that they've grinded and they've worked and they've trained so many hours of their life to get to that place, and they know what it takes. And then when somebody comes along and says, hey bud, you're not good enough anymore, we got to go to the next guy, like, they're in their heads, they're like, yeah, right, let me prove it to you. Like, I've proved everybody wrong my whole life, I can still do this. And then no one, and it's taken away from them. Like, at that, when that happens to many guys, regardless of where they come from, how they grew up, their career, they're all wired as an athlete and a competitor. And when that happens, there's this process of like, I can't believe it, like I don't know what to do next. And and I think for me, I've seen that play out so many times. I really try to keep in perspective this game, right? And it is not who I am. It is not my identity. I love the game. I pour my blood, sweat, and tears into it. I sacrifice so many things to play it. It is what I've been able to do my whole life, but it's not who I am, because who I am is a man of God, and I'm saved by Jesus, and I have a wife who loves me and who cares about me. I have 4 kids, a beautiful family, and I'm so much more than a football player, right? And you have to repeat that to yourself all the time, because this small bubble that we're in, sometimes the pressure and the challenges and the work that you have to put in can just be so overwhelming. And it's overwhelmed me before. It overwhelmed me at times this past year. And you really have to just step back and think about, like, man, like, I trust in the Lord. I know that I'm right where he wants me to be, and I know things aren't going great right now, but I'm just going to trust and move forward and play. And if God wants me to continue to play this game that I love, then I'm going to. If not, I know he's going to provide for me in something else that I don't know what that looks like. And I think that is ultimately faith, right? That's trust. And so when I say that, I truly believe that, because I'm so grateful for what I get to do. Like, don't misunderstand me, but I know that, like, that this has afforded me so many things in life, but I'm not, my identity is not wrapped up in this. And so I try to send that message to myself. I have to repeat that to myself all the time, because I'm just in that world, but I try to live that out truthfully. I try to share that with my teammates, with my coaches, and the guys who have been around the game for so long. And, I think what's crazy is sometimes, like, you don't really see that, right? Like, the way that I see myself as a football player is I try to consistently be the same guy every day, no matter what. And I know I'm not perfect, and I know I mess up at this, but like, after a loss, I try to come in with a smile on my face. After a win, I try to come in with a smile on my face and be the same collected, sort of cool, sort of calm, like, leader in the locker room. And sometimes I get caught up, because I don't know that I'm not seeking approval from anybody else, but I don't really, that's just kind of how I choose to choose to live. And then I can't tell you how many times like guys have been in the same locker room with me, and it's 2 years since we played together, and I'll get a phone call and be like, hey man, I just want to tell you, man, I appreciate like now that I'm not in the game, like just how you handled yourself, or maybe something happens in their life and they call back and say, hey, like how would you walk me through this and help me? I just remember, how you were, and like you made an impact on me. And so I don't realize that on a day-to-day basis, right? You're so focused and locked in on football, and but that, like when I get calls like that, or talk to old buddies, like old teammates of mine, like I'm thankful that God has allowed me to. I think that's why I get to do this. I think God is helping me make an impact each day where I'm at, and I just trust that if He wants me to still play, I'll still play. If He wants it to be over, I'll figure out what's next.
Amen. I love that. I think in particular as men, we can let our work and our activity define our worth, and that's tough. It's such a good. I just really appreciate that. You're more than a football player, and that's why you can be impervious to injury, because if something goes wrong, if your prowess as an athlete diminishes, it does nothing to take away from or subtract from your worth and your value and your identity as a man. Above all else. And I really appreciate it.
It's hard, man. Trust me, it's hard. I think as men, no matter what we do, whatever job we have, like we're driven to succeed and to be the best at what we do. And like, man, I'm telling you, there's so many times in my career where I just feel like I missed it. I get hurt. You got to suffer through those injuries, and like you care about what you do and you want to be great at it. And when it's taken away, or when you can't do that, or when you go through some hard times you wish you had back, or like, man, it is hard. Whether you're in football or whether it's in life and your job, like dealing with those things are real. And like for us, man, I just feel like we have to understand truly who we are as men. And, I don't know that I could make it through all the things that I've had to go through in the league without my faith and without trust and without ultimate belief that, like, okay, God wants me right here in this place, in this moment. I'm going to learn and grow and get better and fight and work hard. And if He wants me to go a different route, I'll go a different route, but I'm going to give it all I have right now when I know I'm in the place where He wants me.
All right. So you've mentioned trust a few times, and this is one of my favorite stories that was relayed to me by a mutual friend, but your father shared this at a breakfast. It looks like maybe 9-10 years ago, but the story goes, it was prior to the BCS national championship game. And, I love this in particular for sporting events, because a lot of people, you see both sides, especially in football, both sides kneeling, praying for, God's favor over the game. And I always go, well, how would God pick between both sides here, right? And one thing I appreciate is this story is your dad said that he found you reading a devotional that reads as follows prior to the game, that my positive energy must be better than my negative energy. My certainty must be stronger than my doubt. The battle is won before I even start the fight. I choose faith over fear. Leave a legacy of excellence, love, dedication, and service. As Jeremiah stated, blessed is the man whose trust is in the Lord. And your dad said that one of the pillars that he tried to instill in his boys was trust in the open and the closed doors. And it sounds like you had a unique perspective on that. You weren't just sitting there you weren't fasting and praying for victory necessarily, but the fortitude and the just the peace to go with whatever happened. So walk me through a little bit about that embracing of trust and opening and closed doors versus just, asking God for a win.
Yeah, right. Well, I think, sometimes I hit on this earlier. We get so caught up in like the process and the training and the work and what it takes to like just get onto the field for the game, and then, I somehow came up with this or crossed over this devotional. I just realized like, yeah, I'm gonna do everything I can, right? I'm gonna control the things that I can control. That's how I prepare, how I work, how I train, like to get me to that point. And then at that point, man, I'm just gonna go out there and play ball, like because I don't know what's gonna happen out there. There's a risk of injury. There's a risk of losing. There's a risk of, failing, right? Like all those are real things. You talk about the mental health and the things that are going on in the world. Like those are, we all deal with that. It's a little bit deeper than that. And to me, like when you talk about open doors and closed doors, like one of my prayers almost on a daily basis is that, if I'm supposed to turn right through this door, God, make me turn right. If I'm supposed to turn left, make me turn left. Don't let me have the option, right? Let me follow you wherever that takes me. And, you finish that quote, about positive energy and negative energy, and with Jeremiah, and one of my favorite scriptures in Jeremiah is just, blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord. And I may mess this up, but it's, blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord, for he is like a tree planted by streams of water, who even in times of drought, its leaves are always green. Right. And so, the highs and the lows, man, it to me, and what's helped me so much is just trusting the process. And somehow in my brain, however I've got to that point, is just understanding that I really am going to do all that I can. Like, football means the world to me, right? My teammates, my coaches, like, I've played for 14 years. I'm going to do all I can to win the game. That's the goal. It's all, 53 guys on the team. There's 22 guys on the field all at one time. Like, I'm trusting that we're going to go out here and give it all we got. And I'm going to leave the results up to a higher authority in me, because we can't see the future. We can learn from the past. We can learn from our mistakes. We can learn from our success. And I'm going to train each day to win the game. But when that doesn't happen, like, I'm okay. And I trust that. And that sounds like I've got it all figured out. I certainly have my issues, and I certainly go through things. I go through, doubts and fears and worries, right? In football or with my family. All those things are normal. But I ultimately turn that over to the Lord and say, God, just help me through all this. Just help me.
It's so, obviously your faith is so integral to I love it, to your preparation, to even just in how you conduct yourself, and so it seems like you have a Christian upbringing. Was there a time, do you feel that your parents just instilled this in you, or was there a particular moment when faith for you went from, all right, I'm in Texas, I play football, and I'm, it's the national religion, versus now I have a real, authentic, like, this is for me? Because I know when your dad shared that story, he was so moved that he said, my son is in his hotel room, everyone else is jamming with music and preparing, just like, reading, watching Gladiator or whatever. And it's like, you're, and not that those aren't great. Obviously I would enjoy a good Gladiator mix, but you're sitting there reading a Jeremiah devotional, and you said your dad just wept. He was so proud of, like, this is preparation. So I'm curious, was there a moment when things got real for you versus the faith of your family, and now it's the faith of Colt?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'm fortunate, man. I love my mom and dad and my family and the way I grew up. And when the doors were open in church, we were in church, and had a great grandparents, and I got to witness sort of what it looks like to just have morals and values and live right. And I totally appreciate that. Like, I do. But at a certain point, man, like, we all have to make decisions for ourselves. We have to go through some sort of trial or some sort of success, whatever that looks like, to figure out, like, who are we really? And I think that's happened for me a couple times in my life, right? You go off to college. I went to a really small school. I mean, there was 600 people in my hometown, right? I went to a small school and somehow got a scholarship to go to Texas. And, then you're thrust into a starting role at UT, and, you're kind of wearing the success or the failure of an entire state and school. There was more people in my dorm room than there was in my hometown, right? In the dorm hall. So I think you have to grow up really quick. And, for me, I was fortunate to have men in my life and made friends in school that, believed a lot of the same things that I believed. And that certainly helped. I could be accountable to them. But then like you got to make those decisions on your own. You go to the University of Texas, you can get involved in whatever you want to get involved in. I mean, there's
Well, especially if you're a
the
famous
opportunities are endless.
if you're a
Yeah.
famous quarterback, I gotta imagine there was a, we'll call it genuine interest. If to put it this way, if you were a stock being publicly traded, I imagine there was multiple bidders for that. And I would love to get your take on just purity and how you kept yourself, because
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, totally. And so I think the best thing I did at school was I got to be honest, I was overwhelmed. Like there's so many people and there's 100,000 people in the stands and everyone cares. And
A lot.
everyone's hinging on like you win or you lose. And my redshirt freshman year, I was nobody. I mean, I was the lowest ranked recruit in my class. No one knew who I was. I think most fans were disappointed they didn't get like a 5-star quarterback like Mark Sanchez or somebody like that. And Vince Young won the national championship,
I
right?
remember.
And I was backing him up, yep, against your team. And so I really learned a lot about myself then. Like, if Vince leaves, am I ready for this? Like, can I do this? And then B, like, just I had a front row seat to it all. I had a front row seat to fame. I had a front row seat to success. I had a front row seat to just like, man, you can have anything in this world if you step out on this field and win games. Like the opportunities are endless. And I think that number one, I didn't know how to handle that, but I just prayed that the Lord would help me, whatever happens. I didn't know if I wanted to play there. Once I got there and saw it all, my first thought was, I'm not good enough to do this.
Wow.
Like I don't think I can. And I just went through this transformation. I grew like an inch or two. I hit a growth spurt. I put on a lot of weight, and I just started getting confidence that like, hey, I think I'm working towards this. If it happens, it's going to happen. And I had to beat out a lot of people to have that job, and then I held it for 4 years. And I think for me, my faith played a huge part in that because I chose once I left sort of the world that I knew that I was comfortable in, like I had to figure out who Jesus was to me and what that looked like and the choices that I should make versus what I shouldn't make. I think that's when I figured out the prayers, and I don't know how I came up with it, but was, God, I trust in you, and if I'm supposed to turn right through this door right here, help me to turn right and not left. Right? If I'm supposed to turn left through this, open this door, and if I'm supposed to go through it, let me go through it. If it's closed, don't let me open it. I don't want to go there. And I think through trials and through suffering and through mistakes, like, man, dude, I'm human, just like you, just like everybody. I sin, I've messed up, I've fallen short, I've done things I shouldn't do, I've said things I shouldn't do. Like I'm just like everyone else. But I just think consistently asking the Lord to help me through all this has been very helpful. And I don't know. I think about this all the time. I don't know what the future holds, right? Nobody knows that. But I can look back on my life. I can look back to college. I can look back early in my NFL days. I can look back this year to this season and see God's hand over everything that I've done. The times that I just felt like I could never get through this, now I'm 10 years past and I look back and like, holy cow, like I prayed about that a lot and God just really, really helped me through that. Right. And I think that is really cool about our faith. We can't see it in front of us, but we can look back and see his hand over all of our things behind us. And we can learn from that. We can gain experience from that. We can gain trust from that. And from college to the NFL, like when you talk about purity, when you talk about just trials, when you talk about injuries, when you talk about getting married and having kids and the worries and the struggles that comes with that, like I just get on my knees and I pray and I ask for help and know that I can't do it on my own and have guys around me who I'm accountable to. And by God's favor, I'm still playing the game. And I will tell you, like, I feel like I'm right where God wants me to be. This season stunk. This season was terrible, right? I actually played good, but we weren't winning and we had all kinds of injuries and our coach got fired. And like nobody at the end of their career wants to go through something like this. But you know what? I get on my knees and know that, like, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I trust in it because I know you've got me up to this point.
Oh yeah. Well, the Lord must be with you. If you end up at the Cleveland Browns, then obviously God's doing a work there. You know,
Yeah.
we're still there's always there's a remnant there. We're praying for them. So I do want to get into this is something that it's just I can only imagine. So you're a superstar quarterback at Texas, and you're getting a lot of attention. At some point, obviously, it's required, I think, in the state constitution that you settle down, find a spouse, spit out kids, play more football. Right? It's just sort of the requirement there. Do you? How did you? I'm curious. Like, how did you? Because obviously, family's so important to you. So, how did you meet your wife? And then, was there any element of when you become sort of a celebrity like that? I imagine there's got to be challenges of like. There's a lot of girls who are giving you attention because of your status, et cetera. Or I should say people in general, right? People are giving you attention. And then how do you know what's authentic and real? Who sees you for
Right.
someone who's like, I don't care about how far you throw the football or, I don't care which McCoy you are. Like, how do you, that's got to be an interesting dynamic of finding a spouse when, you have the entire state's eyes on you every Saturday.
No, I will say I can't imagine what it would be like right now with the state of social media and camera phones. Like, I didn't have to deal with any of that in college, which I remember my freshman years when Facebook came out and it was only like on campus. So, holy cow, like I feel sorry for anybody that's having to find a wife or girlfriend and their superstar athlete. Like,
Thanks,
but I will say, yeah, sorry, dude. I will say that, I just prayed. I prayed about, finding the right person, the right girl, and I wasn't trying. Like I'll tell you how I met my wife. We got set up with some friends. She ran track at Baylor, so she wasn't even in Austin, but she was doing an internship. We were both juniors in college, and she was doing an internship in Austin. She thought she was going to be she was a journalist major, so she thought she was going to be like a sideline reporter or something in sports. She wanted to be something in sports, and so she was working for one of the TV stations there in Austin. They were doing a story over our football team or something, and she did an interview with me and a couple other guys, and that's when one of my friends said, "Oh, a friend of mine's doing an internship." I'm like, "Yeah, I saw her. She's beautiful. Like, who is she? Where is she from?" And then I went through that process of trying to court her, right, and talk to her. But as an athlete, I'm like going into my senior year of college football, like we're number one in the country. We had been very successful everywhere I went. People knew who I was and what I was doing, and always looking for a story. So like it was impossible to like try to first of all meet my wife, ask her name, where she's from, like any of those things, like because there's cameras, there's people literally everywhere.
So you actually just couldn't get alone with her?
No, never. And so I somehow figured out how to like get in touch with her through our sports information director and the sports information director at Baylor. Like, hey, Colt wants to hang out with this girl. And they're like, whoa.
Wait, so you've never met and you had a third party broker?
No, she had done an interview. She had interviewed me and a couple other guys and her TV station. So we had talked before, but nothing like.
So you requested a follow-up.
Yeah, just somehow like, and there was to no end. Like there was nothing. And then I finally went to the Facebook route. Right. And now I got a response, but no, not interested. No, thank you. I don't date athletes. I don't want anything to do with athletes. Like 6 or 7 times. And eventually I was like, okay, I totally get it. I understand. She was running track in the spring. I was playing football in the fall. Like I was like, yeah, whatever. It's not gonna work. But maybe can I take you to dinner before you head back to Waco for the fall semester or whatever? She says, no, I'm not interested. And finally, I asked her one more time. Like I'm telling you, I got shut down like many times, a dozen times probably. And she finally said, fine. I said, okay, well, can I pick you up? No, I'll meet you there. I'm like, okay. So we go to this restaurant and I walk in and she's got her friend with her. He's like, I was like, okay, fine. Like, I don't know why I'm pursuing you so hard. Like, this is a one-way street, whatever. And ultimately, we sat down, we had dinner, and it kind of, her friend kind of became the third wheel, and we really just became friends, And I just wanted her to know that I was not just your, you know, I don't know. There's more to me besides football. And we were friends. I watched her run track. She watched me play football. And she graduated with the same class, same age, but I redshirted, she didn't. And so she took a job in Austin my senior year, and that's when we got closer and started dating. Became and then we got married. We started dating and we got married about 18 months or 20 months after that. And if you would have ever asked me are you ready to settle down or get married? I mean, my answer was no. Like, I had just told my roommate in college, like, hey man, we're all in this season, like no girls, no nothing. Like I'm trying to go to the NFL, like all these things. And sort of, God had different plans, and Rachel and I have been married for 13 years, and it's been pretty amazing. And she's a big reason why I've still able to do what I do. I mean, she's amazing. We got 4 kids, and I think that was all part of God's plan.
So the moral of the story there, if there's a guy out there and he's pursuing a girl and it seems hopeless, just know that it ain't over yet.
It's not over yet. I'm telling you, I'm living proof of that.
I love that. Even so, basically, man, so it's a Hail Mary pass. And finally, I'm curious, when did she break down and say, fine, we can date? So y'all just hanging out. Like, did you notice, okay, she wouldn't keep being, hanging out with me if she wasn't. I can't believe she went to dinner with you and brought a friend. It should
yeah. At that point, I should have just walked away. Right.
Yeah.
She was like, just doing me a favor almost.
Yeah.
No, she comes from a wonderful family, great family. And she was very focused on her sport, right? She was a good athlete, ran track, had a great coach in Clyde Hart. Like she went to Baylor to run track. So I didn't want to interrupt in that. And I think, part of the reason we hit it off is, she understood me as an athlete and sort of what made me tick and how hard I worked. And, she was doing the same thing. And I mean, she's been amazing. Like, I definitely had to work hard to date her. I mean, It wasn't like I'm dating you because you're a celebrity and you're a quarterback. Like, she could care less about that. She could care less about that right now. Like, we talk about, should I keep playing or should I not? And she's like, don't ask me. Like, I don't care. We'll be fine either way.
That's awesome. I love that. All right, we wrap up here. A little quick lightning round here. Colt, what would you say to young high school athletes getting ready to make the college leap decision? Any advice, wisdom? If you're young, if you're the next McCoy and you're picking a school, deciding on all that, what do you got for them?
Yeah, I would just, if you're a young athlete and you're looking at making a decision on where you want to go to college, I would just understand that, like, that's probably the biggest decision you're going to make right now outside of, following Jesus, right? Like, you're going to a place, make sure it's a fit, make sure you enjoy what you're doing, your coaches, your team, and understand that, like, not everything's perfect. Sometimes you look at social media and you have these evaluations from everyone, and everyone has an opinion on everything. Make that decision based on how you feel about it, what you feel about that fit, how you feel about that team and about that coach. Like, be smart with all that and trust who you are. When you go there, just be you, right? I went to a school of a class 2A school. My town was like 600 people. There was probably 50 or 60 students in my class. Like, I went to a school at UT that was exponentially bigger. I didn't know anybody. Nobody knew me. And I just chose to be myself each and every day. And eventually the ice broke and I had an opportunity, and, go pick your school. But when you get an opportunity, be ready to take advantage of it.
Amen. And you mentioned, so, this, may not be your final years in the NFL, but what do you, sounds like you're pumped for this coming season. But what are you excited about just going forward? Beyond even just football.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been playing football for all my professional career, right? I don't know what anything is outside of that. And I've always sort of taken the approach of, this is plan A. I'm not looking to plan B, right? I can't have all these thoughts in my head of, oh, I want to be in this business, or I want to be a coach here. I want to be a broadcaster here. Like if I start thinking about all those things, then I'm losing out on plan A. And I don't, quite frankly, think I'm good enough to like have all these options. I need to be all in on one. But I do in the off season spend time, as I'm processing the year and thinking about what I want to do next. I got to be honest. I don't know what I want to do after football. I do know one thing is I want to spend a little bit more time with my family. I realize how much they've sacrificed for me and for my career so far. But I also know that like God's not calling me to just sit on the sidelines, man. Like I know there's something greater than football out there, and He'll lead me to where that is and what that looks like. And I look forward to that whenever that day comes. But right now I'm just really focusing on my body. I had a couple cleanup surgeries after the season. I'm rehabbing those and really just thinking about do I want to make another run at it, or do we want to explore some other things? And I don't know the exact answer to that yet, but I don't think I'm quite done chasing this NFL thing.
Amen, man. And of course, when you launch your own NFT, Colt Coin or McCoin, whatever we call it, we'll let everyone know. But
there you go.
Before we wrap up, is there anything you want to plug or mention? We get a pretty decent, especially on athletes. Is there something you want to mention, or any work you do, or it's your blank slate, man? Anything you want to hype or plug?
Man, I just want to say thank you for having me on. I know you have a lot of cool guests on here in the past, and you got a lot of guys coming up in the future. I checked it out online. It's an unbelievable podcast. So thank you for having me on, man. No, I would just say that for me, like, I don't know what the future holds. I'm involved in a lot of different things, different charities, different organizations, and I'm proud of all those. But I would say the thing about me, and what I would encourage others listening to this podcast would be, look, I'm not perfect. I fail, I fall short, I struggle with things. I'm very human. But my favorite Bible verse is Colossians 3:23, and it says, "For whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as if you're working for the Lord and not for man." And I think that working hard, chasing dreams, sacrificing things, going through struggles, all that is normal. All that is normal. And for me, I just choose to work hard and know that I'm working for a higher authority than myself, and trusting that God will work those things out in the end, ultimately for me, whichever route that is.
Amen. Well, Colt, thank you so much. I so appreciate you doing this, and especially just coming on, being so vulnerable and open. And I got to say, we know that salvation came first for the Trojans, but then through the gospel of peace has been extended even to the Longhorns. So
yes,
so we know that even Longhorns can receive this. So I'm glad to have some reconciliatory action here between the University of Southern California and that safety school out there in Austin. And so just appreciate you, and just keep it up. And we're praying for no more injuries. And I don't know what we got, this bionic arm here thing we got going on here.
Oh, but, it's fine. I should have covered that up.
No, you're good, man. It's good. So
it's all good.
We'll see. All right, folks, we've been camping with not Matt, but Colt McCoy.
Yes. Hey, all you USC fans, man, I didn't play in that game, so you don't have to be mad at me. In 2005, I had a front row seat. I was holding a clipboard. It was one of the best games I've ever seen in my life. I say that every year. Somebody asks me, what's the greatest game of all time? I tell them, like, the 2005 national championship, like, that was phenomenal. But I bet Texas and USC, they'll square off again someday. I'll give you a buzz. I'll give you a call. We can have a little wager on it.
Absolutely. Well, in the words that should have been written in scripture, Vince Young's knee was down. Thank you so much, folks.